Welcome to the video, guys. The anti-British BBC is at it again, which surprises no one. We heard rumours of this nonsense a few months ago that the BBC planned to drop Rule Britannia and Land of Hope and Glory from the last night of the Proms, which I called out at the time as complete and utter lunacy and obviously forgot about it. Well, it seems they might be going ahead and actually doing it because it's no longer the last night of the Proms. It's the BBC's last virtue signal pandering to something not supported by the country, which is what they always do. Now, it seems to me they are going to take the opportunity of there being no crowds present to make these changes because they likely know the outrage that would come from the crowd when they see this virtue signalling nonsense being paid for by the BBC licence fee. They are a complete and utter embarrassment to this country, solidified when they try to blame social distancing for not being able to play Rule Britannia, when we know it's pandering to low-life race-baiting fuckpigs that I wouldn't piss on if they was on fire, much like the BBC. Well, the Times picked up on this first last night, but we will look at the Mail because of the BBC shitweasel they quote in the article. It headlines, BBC is considering dropping Rule Britannia and Land of Hope and Glory from last night of the Proms in the wake of virtue signalling protests because organisers fear backlash over their links to colonialism and slavery, but don't care about backlash from the people of this country who want to hear our national songs played. So everyone, make sure you write to the BBC, complain about this, scream about it on social media, share this video everywhere, make sure the country knows this is what's going on, and make sure the BBC knows we are not happy about it. Conductor Dalia Staveska believes concert is perfect moment to bring change, which I'm sure if I remember correctly seeing from the Times article, this person is actually Finnish or Swedish, so doesn't have a right to tell us whether our national songs can be played at the last night of the Proms. But obviously the BBC will bend over backwards to look as woke as possible. British anthems Rule Britannia and Land of Hope and Glory could be axed from the BBC Proms amid the virtue signalling Lives Matter protests and Insider has claimed. The broadcaster is considering dropping the patriotic songs from the last night concert due to fears of criticism because of their apparent links to colonialism and slavery, the Times reported. The Finnish composer who is conducting the last night on September 12th is said to believe a ceremony without an audience is the perfect moment to bring change. Yeah, because you don't want to get booed by the audience when you do this if there was people there, much like we have seen with the Premier League and football clubs in general. I would love to see some of these football clubs and the rest of them do this virtue signalling nonsense when their fans are sitting in the stadium. Then maybe they will understand the feelings from the people of this country, though we actually know they will just run around and call them all racist. But like the Premier League, the BBC plan to do this when there's no audience so they can't be called out. So they will look virtuous, but at the end of the day are hiding because they know the country doesn't support it, as I've said. Dalia is a big supporter of virtue signalling, a source added. Imagine my fucking shock. Flag-waving crowds will be absent from London's Royal Albert Hall during the 125th annual last night of the Proms concert due to the coronavirus. This bin 35 will compile the concert's programme alongside Proms director David Pickard 60 and South African vocalist Golda Schultz 36. Rule Britannia is typically performed by around 80 members of the BBC Symphony Orchestra alongside a chorus of more than 100 singers. But this year the orchestra is expected to be around half its usual size due to social distancing guidelines introduced by the government. Only 18 singers are expected to perform. We don't care about the measures they've put in place. Jan Younghusband, head of BBC Music TV Commissioning, has confirmed the content of the last night concert is still under review. She said, "We have a lot of problems about how many instruments we can have. It's hard to know whether it is physically possible to do Rule Britannia." Which, I don't care, right now I'm calling utter bullshit on that. It's their excuse to get away with this in the hope that the people of this country won't be outraged. Let me tell you now, I ain't buying it, and neither should you. Though, to be honest, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, we should all boycott the BBC, especially the last night of the Proms, for this virtue signalling bollocks and everything else they have been doing over the past few years. Some of the traditional tunes, like Jerusalem, are easier to perform. We also don't know if we'll be in a worse situation in 2 weeks' time. And no, it's got nothing to do with Jerusalem being easier to perform, it's just one that won't cause the imagined outrage that you think the country will see if you put up Rule Britannia, when in fact only be the left-wing snivelling shitweasels like the composer and the rest of them who sit there and bitch about it. I have never heard a person from any race have a problem with Rule Britannia except for on the BBC, on TV, and of course social media from the usual lefty-loving types. Rule Britannia originates from a poem of the same name by Scottish poet and playwright James Thomson, and was set to music by English composer Thomas Arne in 1740. It gained popularity in the UK after it was first played in London in 1745 and became symbolic of the British Empire, most closely associated with the British Navy. The song has been used as a number of compositions from various different famous artists. We're not going to go into any of that. Critics have questioned the line, "Britain never never shall be slaves," considering the nation's involvement in the slave trade. Which, of course they fucking have. They're looking for any reason to be outraged because we know that's what they do in this day and age. I can't imagine what these people must be like when they actually have a real issue in life they must go into complete shit fits and cry their eyes out for days on end. Its inclusion, meaning Rule Britannia, in the last night was previously criticised by BBC columnist Richard Morrison, who put out a call for Rule Britannia and Land of Hope and Glory to be scrapped from the concert because they are crudely jingoistic, and because he's a woke, virtue-signalling prick. Last month, Mr Morrison used his column in the BBC Music magazine to claim it would be insensitive, bordering on incendiary, to chant the nationalistic songs this year in the wake of the virtue-signalling movement, which is rather fucking hilarious when you consider the virtue-signalling movement is incendiary in itself and insensitive to every other fucking race, you complete and utter cunt. And let's be honest here, you BBC shitweasel, BLM movement doesn't mean Black Lives Matter at all. It means Black Lives Matter if we can politicise them. That is what it should be called, because if a black man walked down the street and stabbed a black man today, they wouldn't give two fucks. Much like you disingenuous tosspot. He took aim at the traditional patriotic pieces because he's a wankstain and called for a toe-curling, embarrassing, anachronistic farrago of nationalistic songs to be replaced with a more reflective finale which doesn't provoke offence or ridicule, but stops short of preferring any suggestions. Well, I'll tell you something now, you take these patriotic British songs out of this, then you will certainly get ridicule, that is for sure. He continued, instead, the BBC should transform the Proms finale so it reflects the attitudes of its 21st century performers and audiences, not their Edwardian predecessors. Well, let me tell you something now, I bet the Proms viewing figures are going down, and I would certainly expect there ain't many from the black or any other community that are watching this utter tripe. So let me tell you, you are not going to be reflecting the attitudes of your audience, who are likely to be all fairly old and not interested in your woke virtue signalling bollocks. The BBC Proms, described by an insider as the Black Lives Matter Proms, will kick off its live performances on Friday with a piece by some fucking idiot. We're not going into their virtue signalling bollocks. And as a matter of fact, I'm not even reading any more of it because it's just pissing me off, and they're just continuing with their virtue signalling nonsense that is not supported by the country, which I think is actually synonymous with the BBC. It is probably the most hated media organisation in the world. But as per usual, the BBC have shown themselves to be the anti-British low-life scumbags that we have known them to be for a long time now. If ever you used to watch the last night of the Proms, hopefully you will consider boycotting it this time and showing them that you do not support this complete and utter bullshit. And I really find it funny that they even pointed out the fact there's no crowds will be the perfect time to make this change because they know they will likely get booed by the audience. Oh, how I wish we could actually see that happen, much like with the football clubs who have been doing the same nonsense.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires, and that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.